So some things to briefly share is some potential incentive, right, that the Singapore government support entrepreneurship for is here basically, and some of them are already introduced long ago. Like say the tax exemption scheme itself is something that has been around for many years, and there are some revision done for that. But there's also the startup founders scheme where basically the companies with at least 30% local holding, right, can tap into the schemes where they can seek for government fundings and support, including not only just scaling its own business, but also scaling it overseas. So there's some grants for that. I thought that's quite interesting. And lastly, there's the EDB, right? The Economic Development Board has certain Global Innovation Alliance. So basically, if you're coming from different places, different countries, and then you're looking to scale up and have a subsidiary here and stuff like that, that is something that is open for collaboration with also again the 30% local shareholding itself. So why Singapore? I want to quickly touch a few points also on the characteristics and some quick notes to take note within Singapore itself that you may bring it, and might be useful for your startup or for your investment, right? So number one thing is within, if the Singapore itself, right? If you hold shares and you say exit, right? There is no capital gain tax in Singapore for that. So that might be applicable to in other countries, or could be towards your personal holding itself, depending on your residency, your tax residency, right? So you got to ask, you got to consult your tax advisors accordingly for that. But another point about Singapore company, right, is that it has like this global network of tax treaties. So transacting using a Singapore company with several countries is actually quite effective in a sense that basically sometimes you just have to say for example, I'll give you an example, right? Like for Singapore company transacting with like say Indonesian company, right? You could be required to actually provide like this certificate of tax residency to the Indonesian's counterparts, right? And that you can just be paying on the tax on your own end, so that it makes it a lot simpler and clearer without that this thing what we call withholding tax, right? So there's something to take a note of. There is no minimum share capital requirements. I mean, this is more like a general terms of rule. Of course, if you're looking into different type of business, like say fintech company and stuff, and you're looking to get licensed, then there could be some share capital amount required for that. But in general, if you're talking about tech business and stuff like that, there isn't actually a minimum share capital requirement for that. It could be just a nominal dollar to start the company. And lastly is the corporate tax rate. So the corporate tax rate in average in Asia is about 23% onwards. It's around the ballpark. Singapore is one of the lowest, 17%. But I must say that there's even lower one, like say Hong Kong, right, 16.5. But that being the lowest in the Asian country context, right? So it is around, this is like flat 17%, and sometimes you've got to see if there's any rebates, tax rebates that the government will announce during the budget. So this is something useful for the companies. A few more points. So you'll be like, say, there's no foreign exchange control, meaning per se if you are transacting using the Singapore company's bank account, right, when it's transferred to overseas, and then you're making transaction to make payment and stuff like that, then it is more of because the banks will just basically sometimes ask you for a simple, like just to click on like the choice of the purpose you're sending this, and then allow the transaction. But also to take note of is that the Singapore banks also sometimes do audit the customers and may ask for certain supporting documents, but that's more of like it's more of like on the sample, like, so it depends on when you are picked and stuff like that. This is not fixed. It is second most competitive economy in the world, so I thought that's something interesting to think of. It's definitely a lot of competition and stuff in Singapore, and things to think of is also like say is actually 100% foreign ownership allowed in Singapore itself.
So beyond just kind of signing the safe note itself, is there any registration with, you mentioned ACRA, you mentioned kind of I guess the registrar, but is there any registration of convertible notes and safe notes outside other than equity, like formal registration?
Okay, so the thing is, this is a very good question. I like this question actually. Strangely, people have now asked me this before, but I feel that this should be asked actually. So it's a very prompt time, okay? So the thing is, actually, for convertible note agreement and safe note, right, you don't actually have to register that with the APRA because it's not shares. So APRA don't really regard that. But this thing I mentioned, so I just now mentioned about this authority to issue shares, right? So under Section 161 of the Companies Act, the company actually have to seek for authority to issue shares before they can issue shares. So in the nature of, like, say, convertible note and safe note, if it's go towards like automatic conversion, right? Actually, the company should actually pass a resolution, call for shareholders meeting, right? Pass a resolutions in the shareholders meeting to get this authority to issue shares in the event that this is converted. And then in order for this authority to issue shares to be effective, this must be filed with APRA, of course. So it's a good practice, but it's not definitely a practice that's not like it's not a common practice. But if you file it APRA, you're just in a sense also saying that, hey, I've got this authority, it's a disclosure. So in a sense, even for any new investors coming in, right, they have to agree, that they waive their rights for that. Yeah.
Got it.
So I thought this is a very good question.
Got it. Another one came in from Occupy, and then we'll go to Daphne. So from Occupy in Canada, for startups, what's the sweet spot or range in terms of valuation where it might be viable for companies to expand or register in Singapore, given the significant amount of sunk costs in terms of paperwork and funds as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. Good question. I mean, of course, I can't tell you exactly like what is a sweet spot, but because it's very tied towards the industry. So it depends on how scalable your business is, and of course, are you looking outside of Bangladesh? That's a very important question also. If your business, your tech, or it could be technology or services or whatever that is a business that's going to scale out of Bangladesh and then go global and stuff like that. So even at day one, it might be a good investment per se really. But of course, if you're just starting out, you're testing the scene and stuff like that. I mean, I must say that you really might want to consider the Singapore, setting up in Singapore as the holding and or expansion or subsidiary, right? When you come about, let's say in general, let's say tech company and stuff, right? If you have coming, say investment of, I will say I'll use investment amount usually, right? Investment amount coming like say 200,000 above, maybe 200,000-300,000 onwards. I mean, you might want to consider that, because the thing is, valuation-wise, valuation at early stage is really like hit and miss, right? So the thing is that also depends, but I would say investment amount is the one that I determine, right? That, if you're gonna have this significant investment amount, and that you're gonna, so it's like having that amount coming in, but you're gonna reach to the next stage of like say raising a bigger round, like from VCs and stuff like that. That is the best time that you must definitely have your holding company all sorted out and stuff.